Hi, and thank you for visiting my channel. For more information, kindly subscribe and follow. Now let's get started. Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga were at Saturday night's main event tonight. The Samoan werewolf dominated Braun Strowman in their scheduled match. Many fans noticed that on the way to the ring, Fatu was wearing his own ulafala, made from flowers. Unlike Roman Reigns' ulafala, it wasn't made from the seeds of the pandanus fruit but from red flowers, which in Samoan culture can be seen as a sign of respect and status. After the events of tribal combat and the fact that Solo Sikoa walked out on his team a few weeks ago, this could be the first major hint that Fatu has realized that his status is above Sikoa's. Fatu and Tama Tonga have been able to handle their business all month without Solo Sikoa, and it seems that they could have now decided to move forward without him. Jacob Fatu was able to send a message to Strowman at Saturday night's main event on his own, with Tama Tonga being the only man who could get him to back away from Braun Strowman, but only after he had completed the message that he was sent to deliver. It seems that Jacob Fatu no longer answers to anyone and has been unleashed on WWE SmackDown. The lights at Saturday night's main event were blindingly bright as the crowd at the arena buzzed with anticipation. The air was thick with the kind of excitement only an event like this could produce. Superstars from across the globe lined up to showcase their talent, but there was one match that had fans on the edge of their seats, the much-anticipated confrontation between Jacob Fatu and Solo Sikoa. Both men had risen through the ranks of WWE, with Fatu's dominant presence in the ring and Sikoa's ruthless power as part of the bloodline. Their pairing had been one of the most talked about topics in recent months, sparking debates about whether the two men from separate wrestling legacies could coexist under the same roof, in the same group, or whether they were destined to break apart and clash. Tonight, it seemed all signs pointed to the latter. The match itself had an electric build-up. The ring was surrounded by fans who couldn't seem to take their eyes off the two warriors as they circled each other, the tension palpable. Fatu's intimidating stare met Sikoa's cold gaze, as if the air around them had become charged. The stakes were high. This was more than just a match. This was a reckoning. As the bell rang, both men wasted no time in going at each other. Fatu's athleticism was on full display as he used his high-flying style to try and unbalance Sikoa, who retaliated with his powerful, ground-and-pound approach. Each move was calculated, each strike deliberate, and the fans erupted in chants that reverberated throughout the arena. It felt like a spectacle, but it was also clear that this match had a deeper meaning than just a clash of two titans. It was personal. Throughout the first few minutes, neither man seemed willing to back down, trading blows and testing the limits of each other's strength. It was evident that Solo Sikoa was frustrated. His usual quiet demeanor was replaced by aggression, and the normally calculated Fatu appeared to be growing tired of the disrespect and tension in the air. It wasn't until a sudden miscommunication between the two that everything seemed to shift. As Fatu attempted a signature Samoan drop, Solo Sikoa instinctively tried to block the maneuver, a rare sign of doubt between the two. In that split second, Fatu's frustration boiled over. Without warning, he turned his back to Sikoa and tossed him aside, sending the arena into a frenzy. Fans couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. The split was now undeniable. As Fatu climbed the turnbuckle for an aerial assault, he hesitated for just a second, his eyes locked with Solo Sikoa, who was now on the ground, seething. The moment was surreal. The tension between the two men was no longer just a backdrop for a wrestling match, it had become the match itself. But it wasn't just the moment of physical dissonance that marked the end of their alliance. It was what happened next that confirmed the fracture beyond a shadow of a doubt. Fatu, perched on the top rope, looked down at his former ally, his expression one of both anger and resignation. With a sigh, he nodded once, almost to himself, before launching into a diving moonsault. But instead of landing on Sikoa, as the crowd had anticipated, he made a sharp turn mid-air, landing on his feet and leaving Solo Sikoa in the center of the ring in disbelief. The crowd's roars turned from shock to confusion, and it was in that moment that Fatu gave the final confirmation. He turned to the side of the ring, where a microphone was handed to him, his face now a mixture of exhaustion and defiance. The crowd grew quiet in anticipation. Jacob Fatu, once considered one of the most promising members of the bloodline, now stood alone. "Solo, you've been my brother for too long," Fatu's voice boomed through the arena, his tone carrying the weight of their years together. "But this isn't it anymore. I'm not here to ride your coattails, and I'm not here to play second fiddle. I've done too much. I've sacrificed too much. But I'm done following shadows." The crowd was in stunned silence as the meaning of Fatu's words sunk in. He wasn't just walking away from Solo Sikoa. He was severing ties with the bloodline itself. "Tonight," he continued, his voice raw, "I'm not just walking away from you, Solo. I'm walking away from the idea of what we could have been. I'm carving my own path. And I'm going to make sure the world knows it." With those words, he dropped the microphone, his eyes never leaving Sikoa, who stood motionless in the ring, caught between shock and anger. The arena erupted in mixed emotions. Fans, some ecstatic and others deeply disappointed, didn't know how to react. The very fabric of the bloodline was starting to unravel in real time. Solo Sikoa, now seething, could barely contain himself. He stood up, shaking with rage, his fists clenched, but he didn't move toward Fatu. For the first time, there was an air of uncertainty around him, a sense that the future of the bloodline was no longer guaranteed. Fatu had made his choice. Solo had been left in the dust. The moment that followed was a slow burn of silence. Then, as quickly as the moment began, Fatu turned and exited the ring, leaving his former ally alone and defeated. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The bloodline had been a unit, an unstoppable force for years. But that night, a significant crack had formed, and it was one that couldn't easily be repaired. As Fatu made his way up the ramp, the camera zoomed in on his face. It wasn't one of regret, but of resolve. He was no longer defined by his ties to the past. The Jacob Fatu that left Saturday night's main event was a man with a mission. He was forging his own legacy, and he was going to do it on his terms. For Solo Sikoa, the road ahead was unclear. The loss of Fatu, both as an ally and as a brother, had left a mark on his soul that would take time to heal. But in the world of WWE, time didn't wait for anyone. The bloodline might have been fractured, but the question now was, how would Solo Sikoa respond to the man who walked away from him? Jacob Fatu had confirmed the split. And the world was about to witness a new chapter in his journey, one that would likely reverberate throughout WWE for years to come.